Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. And it's Father's Day today, so a very, very happy birthday? Wrong. Happy Father's Day to everyone who is a father, a stepfather, a grandfather, a step-grandfather, and so on and so forth. I hope you are all having a wonderful day. My kids did a wonderful job for me today. I have had a very, very pleasant day and managed to bag myself a new glass, which is very, very cool for my beers. So I shall be using that. Yeah, it's been a really pleasant day indeed for me here. And just to, kind of help things along a little bit, we've actually had really, really fantastic weather. It's been a lovely, warm, sunny day today. Contrasting with the thunderstorms and everything that we had on Friday and on Saturday, where I think we had something in the region of 50 millimeters of rain in the space of a couple of hours. So to put that into perspective, at this time of year, that would be the entire month of June's rain in a couple of hours. So yeah, it was pretty intense. But like I said, it didn't last very long. It was all done and dusted within about 2.5 hours. The worst part of it was my daughter was in West Lothian in a town called Bathgate, and she was playing a football game, soccer game for you Americans who call it that weird thing. I don't know why you do. But yes, she was playing a football game for the local club, an away game, and they had it worse. They had probably the brunt of the thunderstorm and the worst of the rain, and they had to play in it. So it was not pleasant for her. And she said that the thunder at times was like so loud, it was a little bit scary. But they won 4-2, so can't complain too terribly much. But she was absolutely soaked all the way through when she got home after the game. But yeah, it was pretty wild on Saturday, that's for sure. So I hope everybody is doing well, and I hope all the dads out there are having a fun evening. So attendance might be a wee bit on the lower side than normal, so we might not see necessarily everybody here today because it's Father's Day and you'll all be having Father's Day dinners and that kind of thing. We had ours. We had chicken Kievs and fries. It was very, very tasty indeed, which my wife and my daughter cooked up. So it was great. I have had a really great day. Really nice, relaxing day. So let's see who is here at the moment. We've only got like 8 people, but hopefully we will fill up just a wee bit and we'll get a few more people in here and we'll be able to make a bit more of a show of it. That would be cool. So Billy Morgan is here. We've got Ron the Keyman and we've got Dave Barcelo here. We've got Kyle Traduziak. We've got Steve Wilson. And we've got the Loenzian, which is cool. And we've got Tony Stringer and we've got Don Oliver. And it looks like that is it so far. If you're watching and you're not subscribed, you're not going to be able to say anything in the chat because it's in subscriber mode only. So if you do have a Studio One question that you want to ask, hit that subscribe button, wait a couple of minutes, and then it will be opened up to you and you can ask your question. And I would be delighted to answer any questions about Studio One or recording, mixing, and mastering broadly in general, because that's kind of what this show is all about. We've been running this show now for the better part of, 7 or 8 years now. And I believe that this is number 382, I think. I think this is 382 or 383. One or the other. But yes, we are getting very close to 400 Sunday Night Lives, which is awesome. So there will be a little bit of a celebration when we get to show 400. But obviously the big show that we want to get to is number 500. Now, given that we do this every week, or at least most weeks, not necessarily every week, because, I did go on vacation and things like that. And then sometimes a Sunday falls on Christmas Day, for example, so there wouldn't be a show for that. But other than that, we do this every single Sunday. And so given that, you can probably calculate roughly when show 400 is going to be and roughly when show 500 is going to be. So if you are the mathematic type of person, then I would definitely suggest that maybe you take a stab at guessing when show 400 will be and when show 500 will be. That would be quite fun. If you are mathematically orientated, that'd be quite cool to make a little prediction as to when that's going to be. So Studio One 7.2 has been out in the wild now for a week or two. I hope everybody who has updated is getting stuck into it and is getting used to it. There are definitely some very useful workflow improvements, and there is, of course, the new instrument, the Sub-Zero bass instrument, which, by the way, you might think it's a bass instrument. It may be, on the surface of it, it may appear to be a little bit one-dimensional, in as much as it's just a bass instrument. However, there are definitely some sounds in there that can be used much more broadly for playing chords as well as playing a bass part. So, and then there's like arpeggiation and things like that. So I think it's really useful, and I think one of the best ways that maybe you could make use of the Sub-Zero bass instrument is by layering it with one of the other instruments in a multi-instrument setup. Maybe layering it with something like cinematic lights, so you can blend some orchestral kind of sounds with the bass synthesizer as well. So, there are definitely some options. So there are some other sounds and things that I didn't cover in my Studio One 7.2 video that are in the Sub-Zero bass, that if you're looking for something that's a little bit more kind of bass guitar-like rather than bass synthesizer, there are some options there, which we can have a look at that tonight as well. Let's see, Alpha Amiga has just popped in, and he says, hello folks, delighted to say that I picked up Studio One 7.2 in the summer sale this week. Congratulations. That is a good point to make. There is currently an ongoing sale, which I believe finishes on June 30th, of Studio One 7 perpetual licenses. So if you're on an older version of Studio One, like version 5, or in the case of Alpha Amiga, he is on version 6, or has been on version 6, and he has just upgraded to 7.2, and he says, I've been hanging on to version 6, but I like the look of 7.2. It's much clearer. Yeah, we made some improvements actually to the visibility of the grid in particular. So one of the issues that has been around for a wee while is that the translucency of the events and the grid, being able to see the grid underneath the events, has not been particularly easy to do. And so we decided to basically attack that head on in version 7.1, actually. But again, we've kind of, finessed it just a little bit more in 7.2 as well. And essentially what happens now is the grid is actually drawn over the top of the events, which is actually, I think, a much better way to do it. And it took a little bit of work to make that possible. But also one of the other things that was very much asked for was, hey, could we have an improved way to see when events are selected versus not selected? Because it was never really particularly that wonderfully clear. But now it is very, very obvious when you have an event selected. Very, very clear. And I don't think we could make it a whole lot clearer, but we now have made it very, very clear. DeLorenzian says, how to read tempo from MIDI file. Now I bounce, then I put into tempo track. Is it possible to read tempo track direct from the MIDI file? Yeah, MIDI files are actually much easier than audio files because they contain MIDI data. So it's much easier for a tempo map to be created that's going to be much more accurate if you use MIDI. So yeah, you can drag a MIDI event into the tempo track, and you should be able to get a tempo map created. Especially if you are the kind of person that plays piano like you are, and you like to play in a little bit more of a freestyle kind of approach without a click track. But you also want to add some other elements to your piano part. Like maybe you want to add some strings, some horns, or a rhythm section after the fact. But in order to be able to play those in time, you need to have a tempo map so that you've got something that the metronome will follow. So MIDI is definitely easier than if you use an audio track. Although an audio track definitely works, but with tempo detection, MIDI is going to be best. Just so that everybody is aware, there is an issue currently if you drag an event. I think this mostly affects audio events. If you drag an audio event up into the tempo track to create a tempo map, there are certain situations where it will crash. And if it crashes, that is something that actually our development team are aware of, and they are investigating as to why that happens. So it's worth looking into if you have that problem. So let's see. Let's go and create a new song so that we can take a look at this MIDI idea. And we'll go over to the screen here, and we'll put my little camera on at the top there. So let's open the tempo track and let's see what we get. Now, tempo mapping is not something I do. It's just not something I do. I record things using a click track. Why? Because I've used click tracks forever. Because ostensibly, I am a recording musician. I'm also a mixing engineer, but I am primarily a recording musician. I have been a session musician doing recording dates for artists since I was about 17 or 18. That I've been doing that professionally, but I had been doing that kind of on a much more casual basis before that through my teen years. I think I made my first proper recording session outside of working with my parents, because my parents were big on the session scene in the northwest of England and in Scotland as well. So outside of working with them, I think my first actual session for another artist, I would have been maybe about 12 or 13. I think. But then, like I said, I actually started work as a professional musician when I was 17, and the bulk of that work was actually in the recording studio and not on the stage. But for a long time, I was a touring musician as well. But now, not anymore. I don't play gigs. I don't do any touring anymore. I am strictly a recording studio musician and mix engineer now. So that's kind of what I do. So let's go and see if we can find some loops that are going to help us out here. Let's see. That's what we got here. So what I need to do is find some MIDI loops, not audio loops. So bear with me whilst I try and find some MIDI loops. Those are all audio loops. And these are all going to be audio loops as well. Yeah, they are. They're all audio loops. Might take me a little minute to try and find something here. That's gonna work for us. Let's see. So we got some MIDI loops here, which I know nothing about those. Those are by Wavetick. What I want to see if I can find is maybe let's see if there's something by Noise Design that we can use. Yeah, those are all audio loops as well. Yeah, those are all audio loops as well. I think these are all audio loops. Yep. What about in here? Let's try some of these. Yeah, those are all audio loops as well. Okay. Yeah, so I'm struggling to find something that's going to work for us. That's not an audio loop. These are all audio files. And what you're asking about is MIDI. So, okay, so maybe let's just go and grab go and grab presents and let's get this in here. Let's go piano, let's go full. I don't know why it defaults to this kind of blue color. Don't know why it does that. How do we tempo? Okay. So the tempo here is set to 120, but I'm going to slow this down. I'm going to slow that to 90, which is kind of at a walking pace. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record without a click, and we'll see if it'll do a tempo map out of this. So here we go. Or some other completely useless crap like that. So let's drag that back to the beginning here. Let's just play it and see what we got. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, you're right. It gives you the forbidden thing. Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. Okay, so if we were to bounce this selection and then let's crank up the volume a little bit on this. Okay, it's not actually doing what I thought it would do. I thought if I put this up here, it would create a tempo map out of it, but it's not. So, I have to think about how we can do this. Let's go groove. What happens if I put that in there? Don't know that that's done what I want it to do, but yeah, it's not really making a tempo map out of this. And I thought that it would. I thought if I moved this and put this up here, see, you get the little plus icon, and it's not really doing it. It's not doing anything, actually. So I don't know. I don't know why it's not allowing me to do this. Maybe I need to detect the tempo first. Oh, there we go. At least that's what it thinks the tempo is. It isn't. Okay, yeah, that didn't really work like I thought it was going to. So let's change all of that. What's that? I see the tempo map is created but is below. Let's do okay. I don't want this quantize panel open anymore. I'm not sure what you mean by the tempo map is below. I'm not sure where I'm seeing what you're seeing. So you're gonna have to explain what you mean by tempo map is created but is below. Below what? Below what? Where is it? Where's the tempo map that you're talking about? Because you're saying that you see it created but is below, but below what? You're gonna have to explain that because oh, I'm now not seeing the option to oh, there it is, detect tempo. And it still isn't right about the tempo. However, I think I played this in 3/4. So let's say we set that to 3 and let's see what happens. Okay, can we quantize this maybe? Maybe I should have set this to 1, 2. Maybe I should have set this to 1/8 notes instead. It's way off. Interesting syncopation at the end there, but that first section, it's way off. I think I played it so vaguely that Studio One did not know what my tempo was. So maybe I just need to do a fresh recording and actually try and work with a proper tempo. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I was just too vague in what my tempo should be. But yeah, essentially, once you detect the tempo and drag it up into the tempo track, then the tempo track will then, as you can see here, it will put in tempo change nodes according to where you change the tempo, and then that will govern the metronome, and then you should be able to add other elements, even if they are MIDI elements after the fact, because everything will follow your tempo at that point. It works fine by dragging just like you did just now by first select detect tempo. Yes, you have to do that first. You have to detect the tempo. Otherwise, it doesn't know what the tempo is because it needs to know what your tempo is. So once you've done right click, detect tempo, drag it up, it should work for you. So that's like I said, this is not something I do. I don't detect tempos because I don't need to. Because everything I do is with a click anyway. So even if I receive a file from somebody else, I don't need to detect the tempo. You know, because there's a click track and I just work with the click track. So this is not something I ever do. So this is kind of a little bit of a first for me, but I thought, you know what, let's just see if I can figure out how it works. And we kind of have. So you have to right click the audio event and then detect the tempo. And then I just need to try and remember how you hide the bend markers and all of this that we're seeing here, because I can't remember how you do that. It'd be nice to work with MIDI track. Yeah, it would seem it doesn't work with a MIDI track. Don't know why, just doesn't. But yes, you can make a feature request. There is a place to go and make a feature request if you would like to see that happen. You just go to feedback dash software.presonus.com. And if you go there to that website there, feedback-software.presonus.com, that takes you to the replacement for answers.presonus.com, which we used to have years ago. That shut down, I think, a couple of years ago. Answers is now you can still find it if you go to answers.presonus.com, you'll still find it. It's just in read only mode. You won't be able to add anything new, but you'll be able to see all the historical record of all previous feature requests. So you can still view it, but it's in view only mode. You can't actually add anything to it anymore. But if you go to feedback-software.presonus.com, it will take you there. And turn off the bend marker from the inspector window. Okay. So select this, open the inspector. Where's the bend marker thing that you're talking about? Oops. I'm obviously clicking on all sorts of things. I don't see anything that says bend markers in the inspector, so I don't know what you're talking. Oh, there it is. See it? I see it. It was much further down than I was expecting it to be. There we go. Like I said, it's not something I do. So thank you for that. Let's see. Alpha Amiga says, detect tempo is new to me. Does it work on multi-instrument audio files? You only have one voice in your example here. I mean, more than just a drum beat loop. I would think it probably would. I think all you need to do is just drag the audio file into the tempo track and it should work. I believe there are videos by Marcus Huskins that show you how to do that. So if you want to look at using like a mix of a song to replace, let's say you want to use, I don't know, slate drums or something like that to replace the actual drums in a mix, or you want to add some MIDI elements to an already existing mix, you can use the tempo mapping thing to basically create a tempo map, and then you can play your MIDI elements along with that. Marcus Huskins has done a really, really good video on that. He did it a few years back. But yeah, he goes into quite a lot of detail, which is more detailed than we would be able to do in the show tonight. But yes, essentially, yes, you can. You can do that. So you can't detect the tempo of a MIDI track with the menu item. Good question. Let's mute this. Let's grab that mute tool and let's unmute this. And let's right click this. And let's see if I can find that detect tempo menu item. I'm not seeing it. I am not seeing detect tempo when you select a MIDI track. There's detect key signature, extract a chord track, and all of that business. But I am not seeing anything to do with detecting tempo of a MIDI track. If anybody sees it, let me know, but I'm not seeing it here. And I'm searching through every possible menu item here, and I'm not seeing any detect tempo. But if I go to this event here, it's there, detect tempo. So it looks like you can detect the tempo of an audio event, but you cannot detect the tempo of a MIDI event on an instrument track because there is no menu item for it. I've looked through literally every possible option and I don't see it. So I would have thought it would be here amongst these quantize functions here, or in this here time, and it's not. So I don't see it. Yes, you can totally double click the MIDI track and open it in the editor, but that's not what we're doing. We're not editing. We are trying to detect the tempo and then extract that to the tempo track. Looks like you can't do it. Of course, you can double click it and open it up here, but there's nothing in here to detect the tempo. There's no option to do that. If I go to action here, it just gives you the same as the other menu. It gives you exactly the same as the other menu, but there's no option here for detecting tempo. So no, it looks like it's not possible. Ron says, according to AI, it can be done. Well, AI can be wrong. I'm not saying I can't be. I can be wrong, but if there's no menu item for it and there's no command for it, then it can't be done. And I am not finding a menu item by which I can detect the track, detect the tempo of a MIDI event. In order for something to do something in Studio One, there has to be a menu item or there has to be a command for it. And there is no detect tempo command for a MIDI event. If anybody sees it, then just tell me where it is, but I'm not seeing it. I've been through these menus about 3 or 4 times, and there just isn't a detect tempo command or menu option. So AI can be wrong. Does a MIDI track get tempo data from the session tempo? Yeah, generally speaking, it does. Generally speaking, it does. But as noted, if I try and put this up here, you get the no can do symbol, which is what we realized from the start. MIDI runs at the song tempo, does it not? Yes, it does. It doesn't have to be mapped. So you're quite correct. You're quite correct. But if you bring in a MIDI track, it will play at whatever tempo your session is set at. So if your session is set to 93 BPM, it will play at 93 BPM. But if you need to, if it's a MIDI event that's not been played to the grid like I did here. I didn't play this to a click track or anything. You guys all saw me do that. So it's at no specific tempo, but I want to make it to tempo, even though it's never played at a tempo, but I want to make it to a tempo, force it to a tempo, and force it to a grid so that I can add something to it. There is no real way to actually do that with one move of the mouse or with one click of the mouse or with one command selection. That kind of just doesn't work. So for itself, the MIDI event doesn't need any tempo data, which means there's no time stretching involved because it's just tempo data. It's just MIDI data. It's just note on, note off, articulations and all of that stuff. So in that respect, with this track muted, this audio track muted, I can set this tempo to whatever I want. But notice how this is obviously following this chord track. But if I actually just delete all of that data for a second, and let's just move that to 151. Okay, so the one thing I worked out by listening to this, I'd played this roughly in 3/4. So once I had figured that out, then I could go through this by just looking at the note data here, and I could just manually move stuff, or I could quantize everything. So I could set this to something like that, and I could just do Control Alt and Q. Whilst that has definitely tidied up the performance, let's listen to it with the click track. Now we're quite, as we go forward, you realize that actually the whole thing shifts by a beat. So what we could do is we could go through and go, okay, so there's a section there where there's an extra beat, or there's maybe a bar of 2. We can go in there, we can insert a bar of 2 to tidy up everything being back on the beat again. So you can certainly go through and you can roughly find your tempo, roughly just by listening to it and using the tap tempo feature. And then you can go and do things like a bit of quantizing. And then the other thing you can do is if you realize, hey, there's actually a bar of 5 here, or there's a bar of 2 here, you can go and you can insert some time signature changes as you need them. Especially if you've played this in free tempo, which is what I did. And I worked out, as I said, by listening, that it was roughly in 3/4. So that's why we set the timing to 3/4. But after quantizing, it's clear that there's some bits where I actually lose a beat in the bar, which means everything's been shifted a beat early, which suggests that at some point I played a bar of 5 or an extra bar of 2 instead of a bar of 3. Probably more likely is that there's a bar of 5 there. So I need to find where that is, insert that as a bar of 5, then go back to 3/4. And that would then shift everything. So everything is now back on beat 1. So those are things you can do It does mean you're going to have to do a little bit of manual work, but it is what it is. So the best solution really is play to a click track, if at all possible, or use a drum loop if playing to a click track is really not your thing. I know a lot of players playing to a click track just doesn't do it for them, but if you give them a drum loop, they're fine, and they'll play with a drum loop, and it works. So the best solution to this, to being able to have a good tempo for your whole song, is try and use a click track if possible. Wherever possible. But, you know, it isn't always possible. But yeah, that was a good little explore. Like I said, it's not really something I do. I don't, you know, I use the click track all the time. So I'm never really spending any time doing that kind of thing where I'm trying to get something in free time into a tempo. So that was actually quite a fun little explore. So it seems that you can't drag a MIDI event into the tempo map, and I think into the tempo track, and I think the reason for that is it's just note on and note off data, plus any, you know, aftertouch and all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, it doesn't actually contain any specific tempo data. It does have the tempo data as in what the tempo of your session is. So if you prefer playing this at 90 beats a minute, then you can play this at 90 beats a minute. It's really simple to do. And you don't have to spend any time you know, trying to finagle an audio event to fit to a tempo in that respect. With MIDI, it just fits. But if you've never played it to a click or to a grid, then you're going to have to do a little bit of manual moving around to make it work. Or use drum sounds for your click track. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Have a kick drum for beat one, and then a snare drum for all the other beats, or something like that. You can certainly do that. Convert MIDI to audio, then detect. Yes, you can certainly do that too. Which is what we did at the start. We basically converted the MIDI event here to audio, which is how we got this second track here. That's how we got this second track. So then you can just detect the tempo, and then you can drag that up here. But like I said, the issue here was I had played quite vaguely and was not really thinking of any specific tempo or time signature, really. So there is this gap here where I think I actually play a bar of 5. And then that actually confuses the tempo, because the tempo then thinks, oh, he speeded up a bit. I actually did speed up a little bit, but I think there's definitely a bar of 5 in there. And looking at the MIDI data, I could probably go and figure that out and go exactly where the bar of 5 is, and then put in a bar of 5 into the signature track so that everything gets time aligned properly. You could certainly do that. We could certainly find where that is and then put that in, and then everything would be much better lined up. So, yeah. I hope that was helpful. I know it was less than ideal because, like I said, it's not really something that I do very much of at all. All right, so we got about 12 or 13 minutes left of the show. Anybody got any other questions that they would like to ask? We may as well make use of the 12 minutes. JL has been barred from several establishments. Yes, mostly golf clubs. And there's a story attached to that. And whilst I'm waiting for you guys to ask your questions, I may as well tell the little story. So the story goes like this. When I was about 16, maybe 17, I went and played golf with some friends of mine. Now, I'm not a golfer. Never really played golf in my life. So this was like just for, as my daughter calls it, shits and giggles. So this was just for fun. And so all I needed to do was go to the clubhouse and hire some clubs. I said, I'm left-handed. I'm going to need a set of left-handed clubs. They said, sure, no problem. We've got a caddy full of left-handed clubs. Great. So I've got a bag on wheels. Great. I don't know what the difference between an iron and a wood is, other than they are made out of different materials. I don't really know what does what. But the people I were with knew how to play golf. They knew which golf club should be recommended for which shot. So they actually helped me as we went round. So I was on the fourth, the tee for the fourth green, the fourth hole, whatever you call it. And it was my turn to tip my tee shot. Now, like I said, I'm not a golfer. The only sport that I've ever played with a bat is either baseball or cricket. The ball's on the ground, so I thought, well, why, my last 3 tee shots have been pretty awful because I haven't really been able to cleanly connect with the ball. So why don't I just treat it like I'm just playing a straight drive down the ground, which is a cricket shot, where you just hit the ball along the ground, or it goes, airborne for a bit, and then it's along the ground to the boundary. And I thought, if I play it like that, maybe I'll connect with the ball better. And so I stood back a little bit from where the ball was on its little tee, and I took a big stride forward and wham, slammed straight through the line of the ball. Off she sailed. Now, here's the problem. Because it's a golf club and it's not a cricket bat, the club, as it connected with the ball, had turned very slightly, which applied some side spin to the ball. So the ball was heading in the direction that I wanted it to go in for maybe about 50 yards before it started to swing in the air. And there was this guy who was taking his putt on a green. In fact, he was on another green, and he was like taking his little putt. And no, actually, it was the 4th green. He was already on the 4th green taking his little putt, because I think this was like a par 3 hole. And so unbeknownst to me, the ball was now swinging through the air and swinging straight towards him. I knew that golf etiquette means that you shout 4 to let somebody know that a ball is coming in their general direction and to be aware of it. So I hollered 4 at the top of my lungs. The guy taking his putt stopped, yelled back at me saying, I know, and pointed to the flag, which obviously had the number 4 in it. I said, no, 4, the ball! And he kind of leapt out the way, and the ball slammed into the pole for the flag, and I very nearly scored a hole in one. But it like slammed into the pole, like denting the pole, and then went off into the rough somewhere. But it literally flew right past this guy's face before it hit the flagpole. It basically nearly took his head off. And then he came charging up at me with his putter in his hand, ready to knock me to Hades and back. So anyway, this little event, shall we say, got back to the captain of the club, which then also got back to the president of the club, and that was it. They were no longer going to allow me to play at their club. Let's just say that. So I thought, okay, I'm just banned from one club. It's not a big deal. There are other clubs where I could go play at if I really want to. I'm not really into golf particularly, but if I wanted to, I could. So few weeks later, my friends basically said, hey, do you want to come golfing again? I said, well, I have this tendency to nearly kill people. Maybe it's not a great idea. And they said, that's fine. We'll go to this other club. You know, they've not banned you there. So anyway, we turned up at the club, and let's just say bad news travels fast. They basically said, no, sorry, you can't play here. We've heard about you. and so that was it. There were a bunch of golf clubs, golf courses that I was not allowed to play at. They said, look, if you want to hit a ball, it's fine. Go and use our driving range. You can do that. You just can't play on our course. So that was the end of that, unfortunately. So there. I've now told you the story of how I have been banned from several golfing establishments. So providing I don't go to that particular part of the UK, I think I might be okay. If I went to another golf course in another part of the UK, maybe they haven't heard. And it's also been, you know, like 30 years. So maybe by now I would be okay. But certainly, you know, back when I was 17, you know, that's what happened. Let's see. Alpha Mega says, I haven't used the splice. Is that useful to folk? Okay, splice. We can talk splice a little bit. Deloensian says, thank you for trying and confirming, so I don't need to look further at the moment. So feature request is posted and patience is a good virtue. There you go. Great story. Could be the basis for a song. I did actually write a song about it. But I thought that it was going to be for me. I thought I was going to write the song for me for one of my records, but it actually ended up on somebody else's record. I gave the song away basically to somebody else to sing. So splice. Let's go and take a look at that. Let's just close that. Do you want to delete the files? Yes, I do want to delete the files. Okay, so start page. I do actually have something that I did for the Studio One 7 launch. Let's go back over to the screen here. So I did this for the Studio One 7 launch just because I thought it might be quite fun to go and grab some stuff out of Splice. So if I click on this Splice thing here, hopefully it will log me in. Yes, it has. We're good. I'm logged in to my Splice account. And so you can search Splice, or you can grab this little arrangement here and you could just drag it straight over here, and it will basically listen to your reference track, and it will serve you up with a bunch of loops and sounds that will fit with the style, the key, the tempo, and all of that, which can be very, very useful. But as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of these. By the way, I did actually do that. We've got this drum track here that sounds like this. And so the next thing I recorded after that was this Fender Rhodes part here. So I recorded this. This I got straight over from here. I basically just searched funk drums and I dragged this in. And then I recorded this Fender Rhodes thing. And then what I did was I took this drum part and this Rhodes thing and I grabbed these two and I dragged it into this box here. And then this box basically presented up a whole bunch of loops and sounds that fitted the key and fitted the tempo and fitted the style. And then I started listening through them and selecting them and grabbing grabbing different things and dragging them into this song. This is me says, also, since we are talking about Splice, how do you get the free stuff from Splice without basically having a subscription? Good question. A lot of people ask this. So if you don't have a Splice account, you'll not see these sections here. What you'll see up here somewhere is a button that has a little Studio One logo and it says included. So for example, let's say you've searched something for guitar, and so you've gone let's see, let's say you've gone for guitar chords. All right, see this button here that says included? If you click on this guy here, this will filter everything out and only serve up what is included with Studio One. Okay? So there are two separate things at play here. Number one, you can sign up to the Studio One Splice account. You can do that over at splice.com. And it's only, I think, $12.99 a month. It's pretty reasonable. And you get access to the entire Splice library with that. But if you don't sign up, then you'll see this little Studio One logo button and the word included. And then if you click on this guy, it will filter out anything that is not part of the 2,500 sounds that are included. And basically, when you try and drag something that's not included, it'll tell you, hey, these are not included. But you should, generally speaking, use this as a filter to only show things that are included, and then you can drag in stuff that's part of that package. Okay, so that's how that should work. But you can totally create something, and then you could use this as a basis for adding other elements to make something unique, to make something that you could then add a vocal to, or if you're into rap, you could add a rap to it, or you could add all sorts of elements. Now, here's the thing that you need to know to make this whole Splice integration thing work best for you, and also to avoid those circumstances where when you export your music, you put it up on Bandcamp, you put it up on YouTube, you put it up on SoundCloud, and you want to avoid Content ID problems. Do something unique with what you bring in from Splice. Don't just bring it in vanilla and do nothing with it. Change it, modify it, do something different with it so that the algorithms won't recognize it as being that thing that you started with. So don't just go and type funk into Splice, drag in a whole bunch of funk loops, export that, put that up onto SoundCloud and claim it as yours. That won't work. That won't work. You'll start getting content ID copyright problems if you do that, because all of these loops and samples and stuff, you know, they are owned by the people that make them. Okay, so for example, this one here comes from a Vintage Vibes 4-pack. This one here comes from a company called Tritonal and their Sonic Codes package. This one here comes from the Wildcards. It's part of their Sample Pack Volume 2. So if you just drag these in vanilla without doing anything with them, manipulating them in some way, you will get Content ID problems. Okay? And that's not Presonus's fault. That's not Splice's fault. This is just how sampling works. This is how, you know, this is how you can run, this is how people in rap music run into problems sometimes, where they use something like Steely Dan's Black Cow, you know, just the first 4 bars of the intro to Black Cow. And that's how Uptown Baby became such a big hit, because that's what it's based on. It's based on the first 4 bars of Black Cow. And the first, you know, the original creator of that song just used it vanilla. Everybody knows it's Black Cow. Here's the thing. At first, they didn't ask Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, the composers of that song, if they could use that song to form the basis of their song. So they were getting royalties from it, and Becker and Fagen rightly made a copyright claim and sued, and they won. So this is the thing with copyright. If you're going to use somebody else's work, you've either got to credit that other person or you've got to seek permission to use that work. Or you modify and change things. So if you're using sounds and loops from a loop library, you've got to change them. You've got to manipulate them. You've got to make them unique to you. Otherwise, you will get content ID problems, and it's not worth the headache. So this is what I came up with. Okay, so there's not a whole lot to it. All of this is pretty vanilla. I would never release this as is because it's pretty vanilla. So I would have to change some of these things. I would have to shift them in time. I would have to do something digitally to manipulate these to make them unique, so that you wouldn't get copyright issues. And also the other thing is you can also use these credits here. And what these credits will do is these credits will give you copyright authority to use these samples. And you get a certain number of credits per month if you're a subscriber. Which is what I am, by the way. This is me says, do the grid lines show through by default? Yes, they do. And as I said at the top of the show, this is something that has been heavily requested by people so that they can see the grid lines much more easily for editing purposes. So yes, the lines, basically the grid is overlaid now on top of the events by default. So that's just the way it works. Alpha Mega says, thanks for the explanation of Splice. I think that has confirmed that I won't be using it. Well, you know what? There's a bunch of things that are very, very useful in it. I have made some other tunes, which I can bring one of them up just now, where I have used some sound effects, because Splice isn't just about loops and things. There's also sound effects. And so I've used some sound effects in this piece of music. Go back over here. This is called Bagpipe Murder, which I did for a songwriting challenge. And then you can decide for yourselves whether the bagpipe player or the bagpipes get murdered. But yes, I have used some sound effects like the bagpipes, the stabbing sounds, and some other Foley effects in this as well, including the thunder and lightning. So these these channels here, these kind of purpley ones, these are all the sound effects that I got from Splice. And just basically drag them in. So we've got a whole thunderstorm that lasts pretty much the entire duration of the piece. And then we got some other stuff here. This one here, this Laugh Sinister, this is actually me. If I just go and solo that up, this is actually me. As you can see, there's a fair amount of manipulation done to that. We've got some panning, we've got some delay, we've got a whole bunch of other effects that are on there to basically make it unique. And again, we won't get any copyright ID. And this song, by the way, is up on my SoundCloud page. If you go and search for Jonny Lipsham Studios, you'll find my SoundCloud page there. And Bagpipe Murder is on there. There's a whole bunch of other songs, and my EP from 9 years ago, Belonging to Tomorrow, is up there as well. So if you want to listen to stuff that I have done, it's all up there if you want to go check that out. Alrighty, let's go back over here. Let's see. Alpha Mega says, hang on, you're interesting me strangely now. That is cool. Are those sound effects part of the included, or do you have to pony up? For me personally, I have subscribed. Like I said, it's only I think it's like $15 a month. £13 a month, $15 a month. It's not a ton of change, to be honest. And like I said, you get access to everything. So it's worth doing. It's worth subscribing to be honest. I know a lot of people are asking, it's a subscription, no, subscriptions are awful, subscriptions are evil. And yeah, you may be right. You may be right on, some philosophical levels that subscriptions are, because, I suppose ultimately you never own anything. I think the counter to that is that you don't actually own your perpetual license to Studio One. You own the right to use it, but you don't actually own it itself. You own the right to use it. When you purchase a perpetual license for something, you own the right to use that thing. So that would be the counter argument. Now, for me, it doesn't really matter whether it's a perpetual license or a subscription, because at the end of the day, PreSonus is going to get my money. Whether they're going to get it annually or monthly or biannually. If I was to get if I was to be a perpetual license holder only, I would just upgrade whenever I feel I want to. Yes, that does give you a bunch more control, but on the other hand, if I subscribe, I get the latest and greatest immediately. I don't have to think about it. It's just there. It's just deposited in my account. Studio One 8, whenever that gets released, will be put into my account. It's as simple as that. And it's been like that since 2020 when the subscription was launched. So, you have to decide for yourself whether it's of value to you. If you think that the whole Splice thing is something you are going to use a lot and is going to help you with your music production work, or for doing films or doing sound effects, for anything that you might find yourself in a scenario where you're doing those things regularly. If you are doing those things regularly, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Go and get that. Go and subscribe. That's my view. Sometimes when I use the event effects on a single clip, it mutes out some of the audio tracks until I reboot Studio One. Where the heck am I doing wrong? I don't necessarily think you're doing anything wrong. There can be glitches of all kinds in any software. I've had Microsoft Word basically stop typing before. And I thought, that's weird. So I just save my document, I close it, I reopen it, and I can type again. Weird shit like that happens with software all the time. I don't know, to be honest. All right, we are 12 minutes over, so you guys have had me for an extra 12 minutes, you very, very lucky people. So we're going to call it there. Thank you very much for joining me for tonight's show. I appreciate it a lot. You guys are the best. I appreciate you immeasurably. So we will be back here on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, where we will be talking songwriting, arranging, composing, and music theory, those kind of things. So if you've got questions about those kind of things, come back here, 6 p.m. Central on Wednesday, and we can talk about those things. You can ask your questions just like you have tonight. All right, folks, I'll see you then. All right, good night, everybody. Bye for now.